Well, hello again. In this video clip, I'm going to be talking about how projects start. Um, the process of project initiation is pretty straightforward and pretty reasonably simple. It starts where somebody in an organization has seen that we have an issue. There's some type of a possible opportunity. There's a problem that needs to be solved. Some new application we want to do in our business. Projects start for a lot of different reasons. And so the idea of project initiation is basically let's get the thing off and running, off the ground. It's a little bit different than project planning. That'll be the next thing we talk about after the initiation phase. You go into the planning phase. The planning phase is very, very, very important and very detailed. And we'll spend probably the preponderance of this semester, of what's left of the semester, since we're now in the fourth or fifth week, I guess, talking about how we set about and create a good plan for a project. And so the initiation phase is that which gets it kicked off. The idea of the initiation phase is that we want to make sure that people understand why the project, what the project's about, the scope of the project, and really, in some sense, the expected benefits from the project. So it's not quite the same as the project planning phase, which is the next one we'll look at, as I just said. So starting a project, you have to have somebody who really believes that this project is absolutely essential. This person will become more or less the champion of the project, the person who says, this is why we're doing it, this is what we're going to get out of it, etc. And like everything else that we do in project management, it needs to be written down. It needs to be documented. There's one thing about project management that you really need to document everything you do and every step you do. And so the concept of initiation is simply this, that we're going to create a document that justifies why this project needs to be done, called a project charter. You can go a little bit more into detail and make a business case for the project. But then once we have that, we need to identify in this who are the people that are going to be impacted. These are our stakeholders. And I'm sure you've read about stakeholders. Need to talk about them a little bit. Stakeholders are absolutely critical because these are the people who have, one way or another, a very vested interest in what's going to happen in the project. So we need to be aware of who are the stakeholders. Then we need to make sure that once we identify what we want to do, we'll look at it carefully to see if it can be done. And if it can be done, then by golly, we're going to try to do it. And we'll do that by running what's called a feasibility study. So we'll take a short glance at what goes into a feasibility study here in a second. And then after that is done and all the stakeholders agree that looks good, then we start the process of the project by then assembling a project team and making sure that everybody's on board. So the project charter is nothing more than a statement about why we're doing this, what's the goals and the purpose of this project, what all is going to be involved, what is the scope of the project, how many things are going to be impacted. Remember the iron triangle, okay? What's the budget, the expected budget, and who all is going to be involved with this project. So that's what's in a charter. So the charter starts out with the why of this project. We have to make sure that people are aware, and we write down what are the objectives of this project, why is it important, what what do we anticipate the project doing, etc. So we must make sure that everything that we write down is clear, the objectives are well stated, and that everybody that's involved in this project can look at this document and understand specifically why we are doing this project. Your book and most authors that talk about project management, the PMPs, project management professionals, these guys all refer to what they call the SMART method. And when you hear the term SMART method, this is the kind of thing will be on a quiz probably someday. The SMART method simply says that our objectives, the whys we're doing this, are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and are time bounded. So that's the acrostic SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. By following that, we are making sure that everything is pretty doggone clear. This is, we got things precise. The second major element of the project charter is the what. The what simply defines exactly what is and what isn't going to be included in the project. When you create a scope statement, which we'll talk about in a bit, what you're doing is setting boundaries. You're simply saying that these are the things that are going to happen within the project timeline. And so once we do that, this will be part of the project charter explaining the scope of this project and sort of getting an outline, a general knowledge of how much what the budget will be, what the costs are going to be, etc. So you'll give this, the purpose of having this charter is that we can go to the stakeholders and the project sponsor to make sure that this is specifically what they are looking for. All right. The last part of the project charter is the who. The who is just that. Who's going to be working on the project? Identify, who are the key project stakeholders? Who are the people that are sponsoring this thing? It may or may not be one of the executive stakeholders. Could be, might not be, we don't know. Somebody is initiating this, they're generating this starter, and then make sure that they are working with a business analyst / project manager who will then take this charter, create the team, and then start the process of planning for the entire thing. Or if you want more detail, you can actually create what is called a business plan. The business plan just simply gives more detail. It talks about things like some of the things that we're going to talk about when we get into the planning process, risk management, budget management, etc. Some of this can be included in the business case. So when they talk about a business case and project management, they're simply saying instead of having just a charter, we go a little bit more detail, and it tells things like what's the purpose, what's the entire scope, why are we doing this thing, how's it going to impact the business, the goals and the objectives of the business, how are we going to measure, what are the key performance indicators that we're going to use, the KPIs, if you will, so that we'll understand whether or not this project is successful. And so it's very important, and to identify the type of team you have to have, and certainly should include the timeline. So a business case simply is a lot more. The project scope basically is simply looking at why are we doing this, and what are the objectives, and what is the timeline, and what's the boundaries, if you will, of this particular project. Now, in order to get this initiation on, you have to get all the approval of the major stockholders, or not stockholders, pardon me, stakeholders. It's very important you know the difference. Stockholders is somebody who owns part of the business. Stakeholders are anybody that has a vested interest in the business. Pardon my slip up there. The stakeholders simply, are the people that are going to have to approve the project, who will undoubtedly be the source of the resources for the project, and they certainly will be people that might have a major influence on the outcome of the project, both positively and negatively. And so you really have to understand that there are two major sources of stakeholders, internal to the project and external. So internal project or internal stakeholders would be people like the project manager, the project sponsor, any executive leaders that are involved in the thing, and the project team. They almost always, we would consider them as internal stakeholders because they certainly have a vested interest in the success of the project as it's being executed. Externally would be people like contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, customers we might have, users, etc. Other people who would or would not maybe have an interest and might have an impact. But you have to really understand who the significant stakeholders are so that we can make sure that once we go through the list of our stakeholders, identified stakeholders, we'll know those where we can get better support, possibly people who have resources, people who can be champions of or people who will increase the likelihood of the success of the thing, people who can help us with any kind of issue that might get along, and people that we have to stay in communication with. This is imperative in any kind of aspect of project management. Communication. When I'm in the classroom, students I know get tired of me talking about communication, but I can't talk about it too much because the ability to communicate with the stakeholders is one of the major factors in the success of any project. It's just that simple. And so we have to know to whom we need to share information, how much information we have. So when we look at the stakeholders, we look at things like, are these people who have a great interest, high interest in this, and have a likelihood of having a major impact in this thing, a lot of influence, or they have some influence, but not too much interest? Well, we're not too concerned about those people. They might have some influence, but a lot of interest. We ought to know those. And there are also the people who might have a lot of influence, but aren't interested in the project. And those people we have to handle very, very, very carefully. So understanding and knowing your stakeholders is critical to the initiation and getting this thing going and going in such a process that we can pretty much assure that the project will work. So when we're looking at our stakeholders, what do they want? What do they need? We have to know that. How much information do they want? How much communication do I have to have with them? What's the best way to communicate? Some people like face-to-face. Some people like written communication. Some people like electronic communication. We really need to know from our analysis of our stakeholders, how can I best reach these people and how much influence they have and how much interest they have. This is absolutely essential because as a good project manager, you're going to be working with the stakeholders and making sure that those stakeholders are on board, because if they aren't, we're going to have some very significant and serious problems. Finally, the last part of the initiation phase I want to talk about is the feasibility study. Feasibility studies are simply as it sounds. We look at this project to determine, is this possible to do what we're going to do? How practical is this project? I could say I want to build a bridge to Hawaii. That'd be quite a project, but it's not feasible. So if we're going to have a project, once we have identified the project and the stakeholders, we really have to look to see, is this truly feasible? Is it feasible in terms of the market? Is it feasible in terms of the amount of money we're going to have to spend? We really need to know, how much is it going to cost and what's our anticipated benefit? Do a cost-benefit analysis. Have to do that. Is it organizationally feasible? Is it going to work in this firm that we're trying to put this project in? Or is it going to be, if it's going to be a project that's going to have a major negative impact, it's probably ought not to do it. It's probably going to be infeasible because we will not get support of top management, which you absolutely have to have in any project. So we have to understand how possible, how practical is this project? And if I don't understand that, I'm in deep weeds. That's just the easiest way to put it. So we have to look at things not only in terms of organizationally, can we sell this project okay? Is it financially feasible? But also, is it technically feasible? Do we have technology? Are the tools necessary to execute a project? I probably have said that before. If not, I'm glad I said it now, because you have to understand what technology is. Technology are the tools necessary to get anything done. Typically when we talk about projects, we talk about, everybody thinks, okay, it's just a bunch of processes we have to go through. How do we do processes? We do it with tools. And if we don't have the right tools for the project will fail. So we have to answer, is it going to be enough ROI, return on our investment, to make this project work in an organization that needs and will accept this thing? And do we have the appropriate technologies to execute this project? If we do, if the answers to all those questions are yes, then we make a presentation of the project, show why it's so feasible, go to the executives who are going to make the decision, go with the project or not, high level stakeholders basically. And once they say yes, then this project looks like it's going to work and work well for us. At that point, then we're ready to start the next phase, which is to create a team that will be able to execute all of the aspects and the entire scope of this project. So if we can do that, there's a good chance of success.